This is a 2004 Bombardier Outlander 330, and it has blown front shocks. So we're going to go ahead and replace the front shocks. First thing you want to do is jack it up, take the wheels off. If you have a front bumper, you'll need to take the front bumper off. And you want to take all these little plastic caps for the rack off so that you can take the rack off the front of the Outlander. These caps should just unscrew right off. If they don't, you might need to pry up underneath them with another screwdriver and take them out. The long caps go on the outside, and the shorter cap here goes on the inside. Once you have the plastic plugs out, you want to go ahead and take the bolts out. They're 10mm bolts. The long one goes in the front corner up here by the front bumper, and then back here in this corner by the wheel well. And then the shorter screws go in the back corner there, closest to the fuel, and the front corner out here. Once you have those off, the plastic rack will come right off. Once you have access to the top of the shock, you want to get a pair of snap ring pliers and take the snap ring here on top of the bolt off. Once you get the snap ring off, you now have access to the bolt, which is a 41mm nut. Get a 41mm socket. You can get them at the hardware store. This one here was $17. Fits right on top, and you can take the nut right off the top of the shock. At the bottom of the shock here, where it mounts to the spindle, you have two 18mm bolts where the shock mounts to the spindle. Just put a wrench on the one side for the nut and then take the bolt out. It has a little bracket here that holds the brake line. Just a rubber grommet. You pop it right out of the clamp here, and make sure that you keep this because it's got to go back on the top bolt once you put it all back together. Once you get the nut off the top of the shock, it'll just come right down and then come right off the spindle, and the old shock is right off. Once you have the shock off of the Outlander, you're going to want to change over the springs from the old shock to the new shock. And if you don't know how to do that, I have a video posted on my YouTube page of me changing the springs over onto the new shocks already, because I had an extra set of springs and shocks. So now we're going to go ahead and take the new shock and install it onto the Outlander. Go. Alright, once you get the new shock, you want to stick it up in the hole here on the frame, and then screw your 41mm nut on top of the shock. Once you have it screwed down hand tight, you want to match up the holes with the bolt down here. You may need to twist the spindle in the hub a little bit to get the holes to line up, but once you get them to line up, the bolt should go right through the shock and the spindle. Once you get your bolts through, make sure you tighten them nice and tight. Make sure this bracket's facing the way it is here, and then put your brake line grommets back in the bracket, and then you're all set here on the bottom end. On the top end here, you want to tighten down the 41mm nut, and then you can see the groove there at the top of the shock. That's where your circle clip goes to stop the bolt from popping off if it gets loose. Once you get the shock installed, put your plastic rack back on top. Put the 10mm bolts from the top side down into the subframe there, back there in that corner, and then up front. And then install your plugs. Put your wheel back on, take it off the jack, and you're ready to go.